Hi guys, welcome back, Saggies. All right, so here we go. Sagittarians. Sorry it took me so long to get to you. I haven't been able to do much in the last couple days, but I am back, hopefully with new repaired internet again. It's been almost 30 days of this, but thanks for hanging with me. So, who is the best match right now for Sag? Now, I'm not looking at it as like, the traditional astrological matchup. Anybody can read up on that. I'm looking for the story here. I'm looking for the qualities. If I see the zodiacs, we'll mention them, which, by the way, we immediately begin with possibly some strong Aries energy coming in off the tower, and then with that Knight of Swords, Libra, Gemini, Aquarius energy. But it appears that the kind of person that Sag might be a best match for right now would be somebody that is strong, bold, brash, but has been humbled. Almost like they want somebody who can laugh at themselves and be like, oh man, I was such a belligerent know it all at one point. But you know what? I have my edges have softened. I've learned a lesson or two in like I learned how to say sorry. I learned that sometimes you mess up, but I still have a strong will. I've gained a ton of wisdom. I see the world and I'm still bold. I'm not fearful. I might still be a little bit like pop off with the thing I really believe. And sometimes I have to backtrack and say sorry. But on the other hand, I think this person's good at like speaking their truth. And I don't think Sag would want somebody that was like somebody who is a politician. Let's put it that way. I don't think Sag wants somebody where they don't get to know the real person. They'd rather have somebody that has opinions, spouts them off, sometimes turns out to be a little bit too brassy, too bold, has to say a little bit sorry, but they want kind of a free thinker and a free mover and somebody who has the gumption to like get up and do something, but also has this tempered energy of like a kind streak and a wisdom, like a deep wisdom with a sassy mouth, with some humility, but not so much that they're a doormat. I think Sag likes and appreciates somebody that's, you know, like they don't always have to get it right. And they don't always have to be perfect. And they don't always have to be politically correct. And they don't always have to say all the right stuff. We have the devil and the hermit. So Capricorn and Virgo, it feels like Sag is saying, I would rather have somebody who's been a bad boy, a bad girl, so that I know that they know what it's like to not be perfect. And then if they messed up their life and they fell pretty hard, they learned from their mistakes and it made them wiser. It made them more compassionate. It made them more understanding of life. I don't want somebody who's never made any mistakes or never had enough of a swagger to them that they thought they knew it all. I don't want to be with somebody who's never lived enough real life that they have, had to be humbled a little bit and regain their footing, because I want somebody who's compassionate and I want somebody who's thoughtful. And sometimes we don't learn those things unless we've been through some ish. And maybe this is because Sag has been through some stuff. You know, it's better to be with somebody who has a checkered past and doesn't like judge others really, really harsh, because they're like, what do you mean? I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. I don't expect anybody to be perfect. What mistakes do is they help us to learn, and it helps to become more empathetic, and it helps us to become more kind and more broad-minded. And that's what it looks like. Sag is much more interested in having or being attracted to or matching with somebody who's had major life experiences, and it's made them more thoughtful. Still somebody who's a bit of a mover and a shaker, but someone who knows like their own range of emotions. Somebody who's looked at, like their own, dark side and done the dark night of the soul and has come out more thoughtful and is still imperfect, but totally embraces that about themselves. I can completely understand that. I honestly, nobody is perfect. And I think it makes so much sense that Sag is like, and that's what I want, is somebody who knows nobody is perfect. We're doing the best we can down here on this planet. This is kind of our first rodeo. We're all figuring it out. And anybody who's got like some real passion to live and live big and, have opinions and use their beautiful brain, sometimes we're going to get it wrong. We're going to say stuff that's stupid. We're going to say stuff that isn't sensitive. And if somebody has like a strong will, they may buck authority once in a while. I'm hearing, I fought the law and the law won. I'm breaking rocks in the hot sun because I fought the law and the law won. I'm sorry, that song is just saying, sometimes, yes, you drive too fast, they take away your car. You can't just get away with whatever you want to do. There's rules of society that will apply to you. You're going to learn your lessons, and, there's certain things. You can be an independent person, you can have your own opinions, but you do have to understand there's lots of other humans on this earth, so we all got to get along and follow some orderly conduct. But it just feels like, yes, we could have somebody who had a little bit of a bad boy, bad girl, driving too fast, doing something that was considered like, whoa, that was my toxic era, and then I grew out of it. That's what I would say. That's what it seems like Ophiuchus is. Excuse me, I just did Ophiuchus, so please forgive me, Sag. But it seems like that's more what Sag would jive well with, is somebody who has grown a lot because they saw their imperfect side. And they're still real jolly about it. And they kind of don't pull any punches. They'll talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not hiding my sordid past. That's what I did. I made some mistakes, and it made me a better person, and it made me look at myself, and I grew a lot. That's how this comes across. Does Sag already know this person? Will they be meeting this person? Knight of Cups in the reverse. No. In fact, right now, I almost think that there's nobody on Sag's horizon right now. Oh, not true. It's that Sag doesn't have their eyes on this person. This person has their eyes on Sag. But they have not come towards Sag. You know what it could be? And maybe this is one of the reasons that this is coming up. This person may be afraid to approach because they may say, I don't know if Sag would want to, date me or something, because maybe I do have a couple things in my past, and I'm just not sure would I be Sag's cup of tea. I don't want to, put myself out there and then tell them kind of as I get to know them something about my past, if that's something I don't think that they would be able to look beyond. Well, actually, I did get in trouble with this or that, and then I had to get myself back out of trouble. Actually, I made some mistakes. I feel like this person has a really thoughtful and even peaceful persona, still brave, still opinionated and everything, but much more thoughtful. It almost feels like somebody's comeback story. Maybe this person went through redemption. Maybe they got hooked on something toxic. This could be a substance abuse issue. And it's I hit a pretty low spot and had to go into rehab, and, I'm clean and sober, and it's something that, I don't mind talking about typically, but when I want to ask out this Sag, I'm still thinking about, would that be a turnoff to them? I wonder. It's not like this person's afraid exactly, but they maybe don't necessarily want to set themselves up for asking somebody out if they're I'm not sure what Sag would think of this. And it's so interesting because Sag seems to be someone who's super down to earth. Of course, we all go through things in life, and we fall and stumble and skin up our knees, and then we got to dust off and stand back up and limp along for a bit, and then we're back to walking smooth again. I think Sag has this great capacity to understand that we're not perfect. Life isn't perfect, but sometimes that's where the kindest people are built, is through their failures and the people who've had, some tough things that they had to overcome and become the most compassionate and powerful people. So I kind of think this person is possibly paying attention to Sag, watching Sag a little bit, but doesn't feel like they can approach as a love interest yet anyway, because they're not really sure how Sag views the world. This feels like it's a relationship that will take a little time to evolve. Sag may be somebody who's very understanding of life, and at the same time not necessarily doesn't necessarily broadcast that. They may just be real chill, real down to earth, and super accepting, but people don't really know, is Sag really okay with the fact that, because maybe Sag comes across as somebody who's kind of does things, orderly and on the straight and narrow, but hey, everybody's got their past, right? I don't know, it just feels like there's a lot of acceptance here, and it feels like it's only a matter of time before this person actually approaches Sag's life. And I feel like Sag has a great capacity to understand the human condition. What makes Sagittarius attractive right now? Let's take a look at that. We have got the Chariot upright, the Hermit upright, the Fool in the reverse, the Wheel of Fortune upright. So Sag also has a very profound sense of, like, I look at the world around me, I pay close attention, I'm thoughtful in my responses, I'm emotionally stable, I know who I am, but I think I'm mindful before I just speak. I sometimes keep to myself, but then when I have something to say, you can bet your bottom dollar I say exactly what I mean. I don't think Sag leaps into things, though, for other people. I think Sag has a strong sense of who they are. And I also think that they pause long enough to determine, do I want to do this? And if they say yes, Sag is in it all the way. Sag follows it to the end. They don't back out, but they also don't do things suddenly. And I think if anything, Sag has a sense of, they may delight and surprise people, because if Sag is consulting, considering, weighing something, trying to make a decision about things, they may take considerable time. And then all of a sudden they do this. Sag could be the person who, yeah, they talk to somebody and, have a dialogue, and it sounds like, oh yeah, we're bouncing some ideas off each other. And then 4 months go by, and then Sag walks in and lays something down and says, the thing we were talking about, here, I went out and got this. This is what we were discussing. This is what I went off and built, or this is the thing that, it's like Sag says, it's all about divine timing. But when I make a decision about something that I like, something that I care about, I will move toward it. And I think Sag has this way where they don't move fast, but they move with certainty. Every step is sure. And I do think that they consult with their inner voice. I think they consult with the higher power or the energy of the cosmos, because they seem to believe in, like, consider things that you care about, things that stand out to you, things that you find in life that stay on your mind. Consider that, figure out what it means to you, and then move forward when divine timing presents itself. Sag is not in a rush. In fact, they avoid the feeling of rush. I don't think anybody can, like, how lots of times a sales tactic is to make something seem scarce. It's only for this amount of time. You must act now. Sag cannot be budged. They do not do that. You cannot force or compel or cajole or entice this Sag to do something. And that's refreshing and is very attractive to people who know Sag will not be easily swayed, not away from a partner that they're interested in, not away from a job that they want. They cannot be swayed away from what their goal is. The Sag is kind of like a badger. When they decide what they want, they go for it, but they'll do it on their time. That Now I understand why Sag would be attracted to somebody who might have a willful attitude as well, because I feel like this Sag has a real strong backbone. Nobody can deter them, nobody can force them, nobody can trick them, they just don't operate because other people want to pull their strings. This is not a puppet. Sag is not a puppet. And I can see why they would rather have somebody else who's not a puppet either, even if it means, if you're not anybody else's puppet, it means sometimes you're just going to be totally doing stuff your own way, which can get you into a little bit of trouble. But Sag is like, I'd rather have that than somebody that's a puppet, because it wouldn't suit me. That makes a lot of sense to me in the story as to who Sag is. By the way, I do this kind of storytelling about once every quarter, so about 4 times a year, where we just look at where our lead character is at and who they are at the moment. This time I just kind of fleshed it out a little bit more. Okay, what is Sag's greatest strength? Knight of Swords. It's interesting because they can move fast when they want to, but boy, they don't tell anybody about it. And they also, this can be impulsive, but you notice how then he swallows his sword. Just because Sag goes, I'm going to do that, they go, but I have impulse control. I'm going to do that when it's the right time. totally different spin on an impulsive card. This is a fearless, empowered person who sees what they want and they could leap to get it, but they will not. They will be like, I want that, and that's why I will be locked in. It will be mine, but I will exhibit self control until everything is right so it clicks into place. So fast thinking, swift to make a decision, knowing their intuition. This is a Sag who could probably answer anything really fast, like if you play that game like oranges or apples, it's orange, and they just spit it out really fast. They know exactly what they want. And the first thing they say is probably really the truth for themselves. And you can ask it about anything, whatever, country or city, it's like, oh, that's, yeah. And Sag is like, yeah, of course it's city. I know me. I can blurt out what's true for me. That fast, rapid, acknowledgement of what I actually want, it reflects what's true for me. But I have the patience to go get what I want slowly. I could see that being a real strength. It's the only Knight of Swords card I've ever seen where we were actually saying somebody has impulse control instead of being impulsive. So that was kind of a fun one. If that card had come out of any other deck, I never would have read it that way. Okay, I do want to ask this, what is an ex of Sag? And the only reason I'm looking at that is because, an ex is somebody who would have known Sag at a deeper level, a more intimate level. So sometimes they see another version of Sag, and I'm just curious to, pull that thread. We have got the Queen of Swords. How they see Sag, you notice how that intuition is right there. We got third eye wide open. They see Sag as very intelligent, somebody who does speak truth, and somebody who's really good at seeing things, knowing things, seemingly stuff that they shouldn't know, but they can spot it, they can sense it. So I would just say that this Sag is really good at picking up on things, whether they're spoken out loud or not. And we have the Star. Again, we have like an eyeball here, seeing things. The Star can be somebody distant. It can be somebody who's, like a one in a billion. They could see Sag as a person who has that it factor. They could be someone who's meant to be famous, or it's a little bit like, you're out of my league a little bit. You're really amazing. Sag is kind of way up there. I'm not sure that they feel like they can keep up with Sag exactly, but they sure have a nice opinion of Sag, and they feel like Sag is very truthful. And something to kind of aspire to. Like Sag has this, they're rising for sure. And I feel like this is an ex who has watched Sag either evolve, change, grow, blossom, but it's really nice. And I do want to ask one last question. People that are challenged by Sag, what is it about Sag that challenges them? Now, this is kind of tough because it's subjective, right? They could have their own triggers that they're just applying to Sag. But I'm trying to still kind of get some insight into this. We have a Six of Wands, we have an Empress. What are they challenged by in Sag? Sag's success, Sag's, self-reliance, the fact that they can be generous and kind to others while seemingly not needing anybody else. It seems like everything that Sag does, it's well thought out, it's done with confidence, and they are always successful. Now, that probably comes from, Sag's greatest strength. We saw that Knight of Swords that has impulse control, but has the instinct of like, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what I want. I think Sag is good at reading other people too. So I think they're good at aligning themselves with other people that they're like, I can tell this person, they may have a checkered past, but I can tell they are a good person. I welcome them into my kingdom. Other people, you may look like you're great, but I don't trust you as far as I can see you. And I'm spot on with that. And so I think that could intimidate or repel certain people where they're like, I don't know how Sag seems to know, because this is huge, like mother's intuition. Whether Sag is a masculine or feminine, it doesn't matter. They have mother's intuition. They can read people's intuitions the same way a mom can tell, when their toddler is actually like, they're not potty trained yet and they're kind of standing behind the chair and you're like, you got to go potty, huh? Like, I think Sag is really good at reading people's subtle cues, and that could be extremely challenging for other people where it's like, how do they know? How can they read me like this? Because powerful intuition. All right, I'm going to leave this here. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks for giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Bye.